All right, we are COMP397 in the winter 2020 semester at Centennial, and it's week 6, part 1 of our broadcast. We're going to add a scrolling background to the screen. But first, let's take a look and see what that all is and where we're at. So we're starting with a project from last week. If we look at COMP397, we had this project called lesson 5C, 5C. I'm going to make 6C, just like normally. So copy, paste, and you can find lesson 5C up on GitHub. But we're going to do 6C for a second, so we're going to continue with that. Okay, so there's 6C. And just like before, what we normally do is we kind of bring this up and drag and drop. Here's 6C. A couple things we need to change. Just to be for completeness, I'm just going to change this and this. Just make sure that looks right. So it says lesson 6. All that kind of stuff is good. As well, we're also going to remove the remote. So we're going to say git remove origin. And then we're going to add a new remote because we're going to make a new repository. So up online, GitHub, just to set up. And if you're behind or if you lost your, you can't keep up or you can't do it, just download the GitHub link. C. Okay. So that's where we're going to work with. We're going to work with this lesson. So what did we have last week? So again, let me just save all. What did we do last week? Last week, let's Control-Shift-B. I usually start with transpiling first. So there's my transpile. And then I'm going to do light server so we can see where we're at from last week, which is an important thing. Okay, so we have the game. We can hover over. I can click Start, Play Scene, and End Scene. That's where we are last time. Okay, we keep on going back from Play Scene to End Scene. Okay, so what do I want to do this week? Well, first, before we even start anything, your assignment 1, right? Normally it would be due tonight at midnight. It's been extended till tomorrow at midnight. Some people have asked for an extension, so you got till tomorrow at midnight to do your assignment 1. Okay, just to let you know. Also, just before we start, your midterm test is next week on Saturday. So make sure you attend on time next week, because there's only so much time. If you're late, then just going to have less time to do your midterm. The midterm is going to be like an in-class assignment. That's what it's going to be like. So you're going to get an assignment. I'm going to give you a template, so you're not going to start from scratch, and then you're going to do what I ask you to do. So in the template, it'll be very similar to what I did with the assignment, where it says you get this marks for doing this mark for doing this, and so on. And if we want to look at that assignment again, just for a brief second before we move on, our assignment right now for slot machine, so part 1, looks like this, right? We have our slot machine. It's due, it says Saturday, but it's actually due tomorrow night. I made an update to the Centennial. And so it has some instructions, right? It says, like, your game should include a play scene, right? And where the slot machine can be played. Okay, well, then if you just did this, which your game does include a play scene, if you use my template, then you get 2 marks, right? And then I tell you to do certain things, and then part of it might be something like maybe some internal documentation or maybe some external documentation. Probably I'm not going to do this next week. There's not going to be external documentation. But I've asked you to do certain things. One thing I asked you to do is make sure that you make your assignment in TypeScript. If you don't use TypeScript, and if you use something weird, lose marks, right? So at the bottom also, one thing I asked you to do for your assignment is to put it up on GitHub and put it up live on a cloud service. This part, game is live and online, right? I haven't shown you how to do this, and that's why I wanted to extend you one day to show you how to do it now, so you have everything you need. There's also bonus stuff. One thing people asked me earlier today was, so I don't have an animation effect. Am I going to lose marks? No. Animation effect is bonus. It's optional, right? So the only thing I want for this assignment is, like, can you show me the images when you press the button? Of course, it has to follow the rules of the game, which is you have to have some credits, all these things that I said before. That all has to work. And I gave you some example interfaces, maybe something that looks like this. Someone said, well, what if I don't have an interface that looks like a slot machine? Okay, then you'll lose marks. That's what's going to happen. Well, do I have to do it? Yeah, otherwise you'll lose marks, right? I mean, it's like follow the assignment is what I can ask you to do. It's not that difficult, but it can take some time to do all this. So if you're starting today, which I had a student today that says, I'm starting today. I haven't started yet. Okay. You're going to have to work all day today and probably most of the day tomorrow to get it done. It's just like a lot of work, right? And then like, what about this? They said, I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist, but you're asking me for this company logo. What is this company logo? That's you. That's your own personal logo. You're acting like a little company for tomorrow, right? That's what it is. And then someone said, well, like, I'm not an artist. How do I do that? Put up paint, and then you can use some kind of basic shape and your initials. Yay. Doesn't have to be crazy. It can be like so simple. Please don't copy somebody else's logo and invert it or some weird thing, and it's got to be your own. Okay, so that's all due tomorrow night at midnight. So just like this little document that tells you what to do, next week on your midterm, it's going to be very similar in terms of format. You're going to have some instructions of things that you need to do, and as long as you follow those instructions, then you're going to be fine. Okay, that's pretty straightforward. If you don't do your assignment number 1 on your own, or if you don't know how to do it, next week will be very difficult for you, because I'm going to be using the exact same stuff we're talking about, and even the template I'm going to give you is going to be based on what you're learning here in class. So hopefully, you've got your good handle on Create.js. That's what I'm hoping. You know how to make use of buttons and labels, and you know how to do some kind of random number. That's really what I'm looking for next week in a nutshell. The best way to study is try and set up your project from scratch, just like before. Go through the videos if you can, if you have time. Try and look through them and see if you're missing anything, and make a little project for yourself to do something. Of course, finish your assignment. That'd be the great thing to do. Finish your assignment. The midterm tests will be based, or I'll give you the whole time, but it'll be made so that you can finish it within an hour to an hour and a half. Okay? So it won't be very long. We won't do any other teaching next week. It'll just be the midterm test. You come in, do your midterm test when you're done. See you later. Right? Like that. And then we won't see each other for a couple of weeks, because the week after next week is midterm or mid-semester break. Okay? And that's a little bit about that. Questions about assignment 1 or the midterm test for next week? Again, things that we've talked about before. There should be no surprises at this point, right, in terms of what is going to be done. Also, one thing to note is your alpha release was also due next week around the same time as the midterm, if I'm not wrong, right? I'm going to push that out till after the midterm. So the due date's going to be week 8, not week 7, for your alpha release for your group. It's too much work, I feel, for you guys to do everything at once, and I want to give you a chance to be successful. So we're going to push that day out, okay? I'll make an announcement to that effect. All right, so today we need to do a bunch of stuff. So one of the things we need to do is make it so that I can have some kind of background. After this week, when we talk about, we've talked about buttons and labels. I did a scene for you with a state machine. So last week we talked about this. We said, hey, I want to make several scenes, and so I have different scene classes. I made under objects, I created a scene class. The scene class is just a container. That's all it is, right? We talked about this last week. And it has 3 abstract functions: start, update, and main. Those 3 functions. And then so every scene that inherits from the scene class, and let's take a look at those scenes. We have 3 scenes we made, 3 little scenes. One of them is the start scene. It inherits from objects.scene. It extends object.scene. So it has start, update, and main, does some stuff. Same thing with my play scene and my end scene. All those 3 things have start, update, and main, because that is what the scene is. So that's what the scene is. How do I switch between scenes? So remember we said we can start with one scene, click a button, and then go to the next scene. Well, when we click a button, we use the game.ts, and on the bottom we have this little finite state machine. This is what it looks like. It has a switch case statement. And what we're doing is we're saying, okay, when I press the start button, it's going to, go to the play scene. In the beginning, when we first start, it's going to instantiate a new start scene. And notice we have this thing called current scene. Current scene is a pointer to the current scene that's loaded. Now remember that there's 3 different scene classes I'm using here. A start scene class, a play scene class, and an end scene class. But each of these classes are a scene class. They're all scenes, right? So all I'm doing is I'm saying, hey, I don't know what the current scene is, but whatever it is, make it now a new start scene. So that's what this is. Make it a play scene. Make it a end scene. So I don't know what it is, but when depending on the buttons that are pressed, I'm going to instantiate that type and save a reference to it inside this current scene variable. That's what happens. We also use this current scene state to basically keep track of which scene I'm on. That's what I'm doing. That's what I do with this current scene state. And we're using a little scene state, I think it's in scenes, scene state enum that basically says, am I no scene, start, play, and what scene am I? It's just like almost like a friendly name for the scene. That's an enumeration, right? So I can choose which one of them I'm using. And if I was going to add more scenes, I would make a level 1 scene, level 2 scene, level 3 scene, instruction scene, transition scene. I would put them in here first, and then once I have the friendly name for it, then when I make a new scene, I'm going to switch to it inside of my game.ts. I'm going to say if it's whatever it is, then do instantiate this object and save it, a reference to it in current scene. So that's how the scene switcher works. It works inside the game.ts, right? What also happens is it cleans up, for active scenes, it cleans up all their children. It removes all the children, and it also removes the children from the stage. And what this does, it cleans everything up, and then after it cleans everything up, we can instantiate new objects of that type. Okay, so that's how it works. So JavaScript is a memory safe language. There's not going to be a lot of memory leaks like there would be, let's say, in C++. Or in other languages. So once we delete the scene or we point to something else, it eliminates the other stuff that it was pointing to, okay? Since there are no pointers. So that's how the scene switcher works. And that's what we did last week. That's why we can go to this and I can click the buttons. If I go to this is the first scene, second scene, and the third scene. That's what those things are. We're moving from one scene to the other. Each scene is a container. That's what we talked about last week. And each scene has its own world. If you think about it, each scene is its own world. That means I can use the same coordinate space, 0 to whatever it is, 640 on the x-axis and 480 on the y-axis, and I can reuse that coordinate space over and over again because I'm literally just wiping out the old one and placing a new one, which is something that's happening. So what do I want to do today first? Excuse me. What I want to do today is I want to have some additional assets that we can use, and I put them up on eCentennial. There's something called Mail Pilot Assets, so please download those. And I also put this key map on I was going to show you a key map today, but I'm not sure if I'm going to get to this week. I may have to get to it week 8 when we come back, and we'll talk about it. I wanted to do almost like a keyboard input thing, but during our the first section that we just did, I didn't really have a chance to get to it with all the things I had to explain for the stuff that I was putting into place. So we're going to do a couple things. If you notice, if I download the assets that I get, I'm going to put inside of my assets folder. And right now I have a few images that I have in my assets folder, but I want to add some more. So if I go to that spot, which, let me see if I can get to it. Okay, this is what the new stuff looks like. Okay, that I'm adding in. But if you download the stuff that I've given you, so that's under my assets for for what I've shared with you. This stuff here, assets.zip, that's on eCentennial. you're going to get a bunch of, let me just undo that. Let me just get rid of this. And let me unzip this again. So I'm just going to unzip this so you can see what you get. So extract here. You get audio, fonts, and images. Okay, so I want audio. So again, this is lesson 6C. I have images. I want to get audio. So I'm going to copy this, as well as fonts. Okay, but I don't want all the images. There's a lot of images here. I don't need them all. I do need a couple of them. So I want the bullet. I want to get the bullet, the cloud. I also want the island, and I want the plane. So plane is good. Ocean is also good to have, plus plane 1, plane 2, plane 3. So all those ones I want. The rest I don't need because I already have buttons. So I want to kind of copy these and paste them in there. And that's what those things look like. So you have a cloud, an island, an ocean, a bullet, and a bunch of different planes. Okay? So once you have those, then we can start adding them in. So this is what I want to do. I have an ocean graphic that kind of looks like this. All right, so let me just going to trim the canvas here so we can see what it looks like. It looks like this. Here's my canvas. So you can imagine if, and I put this yellow box right here, this yellow box is representing the screen, what you can see. What I want to do is I want to move the ocean down so that what looks to be on the screen, you can see that it looks like it's scrolling. Scrolling means it's moving down the screen like this. There's different kinds of scrolling. This is single axis scrolling on the y-axis only. Sometimes you also see axis scrolling on the right and left side on this way. And there's also something called multi-axis scrolling, where you can scroll up, down, whatever you want. Some tank games use that kind of thing where they can see different parts of the world. Okay? For us, we're going to make things scroll from the top. So what's going to happen is you're only going to see this part. But there's going to be another part of the object that's going to be off screen. By the way, this same thing that I'm showing you here for scrolling can be used for animation for your slot machine. You can put stuff off screen, and then you can kind of show different things as it comes in. So it shows like images are animating coming into the slot machine, right? But really it's not happening. It's an illusion. So again, we're going to start the this ocean like way up here, so at a negative y-axis. So this will be like negative 960. How do I know that? Well, I've been using this ocean for a while, number one. But also, if you notice, this is the viewport, and this is 640 by 480. It's about 3 viewports high. So 1, 2, 3. So if it's 1440 pixels, then the remainder, if you take 1440 and subtract it from 480, you get 960. So 960 pixels of ocean is off screen to the top, which means negative 960. That's where it starts. So it starts at negative 960. It's going to scroll down. And when the top of the ocean hits the top of the screen, reset. It's going to come back up to here. Remember what we're trying to do. We're making a little game that kind of looks like this. Remember my little game? That's what it's going to look like. Okay, and you can find this at my lastname.com. So it's going to scroll like this, and then when I press start, you're going to see a little plane that kind of goes like this. It's going to avoid the clouds. If it hits the clouds, right, then it's going to, my plane takes damage, right? However, if I just go over the islands, then I get points. Okay, you can see the points are going up. Okay, there we go. Okay, so I can go points up, points down. So this scrolling background is what you're seeing. And what's happening here is exactly what I'm describing, right? So it's doing this. It's going down like this. It's hitting the top of the ocean, hitting the top of the screen, and then reset. And it's going to do that every single time. Now, this is not perfect. Why? Because the top of this graphic and the bottom of this graphic are not the same. It's not 100% tileable. So you might see some kind of weird distortion or a line, right? So to mitigate this, to fix this, you can have two. So you can have a second ocean, right? And the second ocean can be off screen too. So here's what you can do. When this ocean comes to here, right? It's going to start like this. It's going to scroll all the way down to here, right? and it's going to keep scrolling all the way down until it comes off screen, right? So until it goes off screen. There's another way you can do it. So now it's going to go here, and when this ocean comes down to here, this ocean here is going to come back up to here on the top. And it's going to keep doing this. This ocean is going to come down, you're going to move this one up here. This ocean is going to come down, you're going to move this one up here. And so you're going to reset off screen. If you reset off screen, you don't see any defects. Okay, I'll show you the defect in a second. So that's what we want to do right now. And I'm going to use this ocean graphic to do it. So step one, how do I make the ocean? I need a new game object. So I'm just going to close all this down for a second. So close. Let's make a new object inside the objects folder. So a new file. We're going to call this ocean.ts. It's going to be inside module oceans, module objects. Sorry, I'll be okay. Right? And inside module objects, we're going to export a new class that's called ocean. Okay? Which is going to extend the game object superclass that we made. Okay, that's the first part. Now you notice that there's a little underline. It means that if I hover over, it says, hey, you're not implementing the inherited abstract members reset, start, update, because those are part of the game object superclass. Let's just do that now. So click onto there. You can see that there's a quick fix. It's going to make that all come in. And what I can do is just space them out a little bit so I can use those methods in my new class. I also want to make sure that curly braces are always on the next line because it makes it better for troubleshooting. I don't care about this stuff, you know, because we're not going to throw any errors right now. Although they're good to have that throw statement. And now let's try and scaffold out my class. So I'm going to have private instance members, right? I'm going to have public properties. I'm going to have a constructor or more. I'm going to have some private methods. Well, that's what this is. This check bounds is kind of private. It's private or protected. So that's okay. And then down here, I'm going to have some public methods. These are the private methods I have, right? So this is going to be my ocean. Now in my ocean, I want a constructor. And my ocean's constructor is going to use the super constructor. I'm not going to actually pass anything to the ocean. The ocean's going to pass stuff in here. So super, and then I need the name of my file. So it's going to be ./assets/images/ocean.gif. And if you don't know where that is, again, you can look at assets, images, and then here's my ocean.gif. See, this is it. That's what I'm loading. That's what's here. And then, where do I want my ocean to start? It says 0 and 0. And then, is my ocean centered or not? The answer is, it's not centered. I'm not going to change this. And by default, if I'm not wrong, I made all objects not centered. So if you look at the game object superclass, you can see that in the constructor function, which is here, that it's false. It's not centered by default. So then in the ocean, I don't have to specify anything. I can just literally go here and I just want to pass it the path. That's it. That's enough. Okay, because the rest, X and Y, are optionals, and so is, if I hover over, the little question mark here means optional, optional, optional. All these are optional. So I don't have to use those anymore, right? Just this. So okay there. So I've made the ocean. That's what it's going to look like. And now what I want it to do is move down. So, how am I going to move my ocean down? Well, I need to add something to the position every frame. Some kind of, speed. So on my private instance members, I'm going to make a new private variable called horizontal speed. Sorry, that would be vertical speed. Vertical speed. Right? Not horizontal. Vertical speed is going to be a number. And I'm going to make it optional for now. So it's going to take that thing away. And what I want to do is in my start method, I want to define what that is. My start method needs to start after my constructor. So I'm going to pull it here. I'm going to say this dot start. So it's going to call the start method. So when I create this object, the start method is going to be called right away, this one. And I'm going to say that this dot underscore vertical speed is equal to something like 5 pixels per frame. 5 pixels per frame. That's my vertical speed. But I want to add this to the object. I can do it in two ways. I want to change the position, but really what I need is a velocity, some kind of velocity vector for my object. Remember that in physics we have a few different things, right? We have position, we have velocity, which is a rate of change of position over time, and we have acceleration, which is a rate of change of velocity over time, right? So we don't need all that stuff because we're not making a physics game, but it'd be nice to have velocity that we can add to my position every single frame. That's all I'm doing, adding velocity to my position. If my velocity is not increasing, there's no acceleration. So we can add that to the game object, superclass. I can add a new thing. We have position, but it'd be nice to have velocity. Let's add that in. So private underscore velocity, which is a new vector 2, right? So I'm modifying my game object superclass so that all game objects have velocity now. And just like before, what I want to do is I want to go here and just create that this dot underscore velocity is equal to a new vector 2 object where I'm not passing in a reference to this because there is no velocity on a display object typically, so I don't need this part. This part was so that way when I update the x on the vector, it updates the x on the display object that's connected to the vector. Here, there's no game object that's really connected to a velocity, so I don't need to do that. Okay, so that's this. I also need getters and setters. I have position. I need velocity getter and setter. So let's do that. So again, I'm going to say get velocity, which is going to return a new vector 2 object, right? And I'm just going to return this dot underscore velocity. That's all I'm doing here. And then also I need to set velocity with a new velocity, which is going to be a vector 2. And I'm just going to say that this dot underscore velocity is equal to new velocity. Wow. Okay, so that's your getter and setter. Done. So I know I can add I can get velocity and set velocity. And this is again, this is in the game object superclass. Cool. All right. So that's cool. And then let's go back to my ocean.ts. Okay, so I have that velocity now. I know that my velocity is by default 0. And I want to change it. Every frame, I want to have my velocity equal to 0 on the x-axis and 5 on the y-axis. So I'm just going to go here and do that. I'm going to say that this velocity is equal to a new vector 2 object that's 0 on the x-axis and this dot underscore vertical speed on the y-axis. Now notice I separated these things and I could have put this 5 in here and not have a vertical speed, but maybe I need to access this vertical speed somewhere else at some point in the future. For now, I'm going to leave it like this. Okay, separate. But I could have made it 1. Okay. Cool, so I set the vertical speed, and now on move, I want to have a move function. Let's make that private. So private underscore move returns void. I want to do something. I want to move my object every frame. So in the update function, I'm going to say this dot underscore move. I'm going to call move, and then I'm also going to call something called check bounds. Okay, but check bounds is not going to really do anything. I mean, what am I going to check for the ocean? Except for when the top of the ocean gets to the top of the screen. That's when I'm going to check bounds. Okay? So I'm really checking the upper bounds. Okay? So that is my update function. And my update function is going to be called by my scene class, whatever that is. In this case, the first one we'll do it is on the start scene. Okay? And we'll show you this in a sec. Okay? So that's how it works so far. Okay? Move. Let's define the move. So the way you move is I want to change the position. So this dot position is equal to, I want to take two objects and add them together, my current position plus my velocity, add them together, they're going to give me a new vector. However, there is no overloaded operators in JavaScript. We talked about this. So we'd have to have an add method. So I would have to do something like this, vector2 dot add, and we don't have that. I can modify the existing vector by saying this dot add and then add something, but I want to make it so that I can do it with my vector, my static vector class. So again, into the vector class I go. I already have, I know I probably have a subtract because that makes sense. So way at the bottom, I have some static methods, and I might have a subtract. Maybe I don't. If I don't, I should. I should be able to subtract two vectors and get a vector. So let's do that. Let's add two more methods. Public static. I'll make one that's add, and I'll have two parts. I'll have the left-hand side, which is my vector2, and I'll have the right-hand side, which is another vector2. Right? So I've left vector1 and vector2. I'm going to say that I'm going to add the left-hand side together. So I kind of did this already. And if you look up in the add, I kind of did this dot x and so on, and this dot y, right? So I want to say that let the x's, let's say the x is equal to left-hand side dot x plus right-hand side dot x. I'm adding those together, right? And let the y's, right, equal to left-hand side dot y plus right-hand side dot y. Okay, so I did that. And then what I can do is I can make a new vector2, return a new vector2 object that returns the x's and the y's together in a new vector. So which is exactly what this would do. This would return a new vector2 object. Okay? So brand new vector2. And if I was going to do the subtract, it'd be like the add. It would just subtract instead of add. So subtract. If I did that, then I can just say this one minus this one. Left-hand side minus right-hand side. Okay? Make sense? Left-hand side minus right-hand side. Left-hand side plus right-hand side. Actually, it really doesn't matter if you... Same thing. I'm subtracting from the left-hand side the right-hand side. That's what I'm doing. That's how you would do it, right? You would say like 5 minus 3, right? So, okay, so this is these two functions, which means now that if I go back up to my ocean, then I can just do that. I can say that vector2 dot add, it's now a static function. I can say left-hand side and right-hand side. There it is. The left-hand side, I want to take the position. And the right-hand side, I want to use the velocity. Right? And now I have a new vector. I add these two things together, and I have a new vector that I create here. This can happen every frame. Every frame, I make a new vector, I add the position and the velocity together. And I keep doing that every frame, which is going to move my object down the screen. Because my velocity is 0 and 5. Right? 0 on the x-axis, 5 on the y-axis. Good? Okay, cool. So I move down the screen until, like we said, until the top of this thing gets to here. When it gets to here, I need to do something. I need to detect when this thing comes to here, to when the top of the screen the top of the ocean gets to the top of the screen. So that means in check bounds, I'm going to say something like this. If this dot y is greater than or equal to 0, because now it starts off negative 960, goes to 0, right? Then I want to this dot reset. It's going to reset, right, back to where it was before, but I never set it before. So the reset function, which is here, is going to say that this dot position dot y is equal to negative 960. If you want to be a stickler, which means you don't want to do this, right? You could just make it equal to a new vector2 object, just to be the same as everything else we've done, which is 0 on the x-axis and negative 960. If you really wanted to be complete, right? Which is the same thing, okay? But I just want to show you that sometimes maybe people, just to keep it the same, you want to try and do this. That's fine. So here it is. You have a new vector. It sets it up, -960. It repositions it up to the top. And you know what? It makes sense that we reset on start. So we make a vertical speed. We have a velocity. And you know what? Right away, let's reset. So that we start the ocean off screen, which is at -960. Now, one thing I don't like is the fact that we're hard coding it. We're saying 960 exactly. I mean, what if we replaced my ocean, my background with something else? Maybe 960 is not going to be correct. This is not optimal. Maybe we want to put some kind of other thing in there. Maybe we have to size the ocean. I'm not doing that today, but we would. It would be better if we could somehow detect how big my ocean is, and then calculate this value as opposed to put a hard-coded value in here. Okay. Cool. We've made our ocean. Can we use it yet? No, we can't. And this is what you're going to face next week when you do your test. You need to add it to your index.html. You must add any objects you create here in your index.html. So we made some objects, player, label, and button, and now we're going to add ocean. If you don't add it here, it cannot be available. All right, so again, script source /scripts objects ocean.js. Now we can use it. Now that we've included it here inside of my list of objects in my index.html, because remember my index.html is a manifest for all of my objects, all my scripts that are together. It binds everything together because this is the main reason why we're doing this, is the web, right? Cool. So now that we've done this, we can add it to my scene, and I want to add it to my start scene for now. But really I want to add it to all of my scenes, because if remember what my goal is to do this. Right? So look, here's the start scene, here's the play scene, I'll just die, and here's the end scene. All of them have the ocean. So they must be in all places. So that means let's start off with my first one inside my start scene. So my start scene right now has this. It has a welcome label and a start button. They're not really named that great. And they're not private. This should be private. Like it says up here, private instance members, but we're not private. Let's make them private. Again, from a JavaScript perspective, there is no private. It doesn't exist. However, private for us means there's going to be checks. If I try and use an object that's not private, it's going to complain. I want the complaint. I want help when I'm coding. That's why we're using TypeScript, because it helps me code better, right? And also, the names of these things don't make any sense, because I say that all privates should have an underscore in front of it. That's just my convention. So let's rename this thing. So rename symbol. We'll call it underscore welcome. And if I rename symbol like this, it's going to do it everywhere, right? As opposed to just changing in one place. So underscore start button. And we'll make a new ocean now. Private underscore ocean is of type objects.ocean. Okay, so that's the new thing. However, like we did the initialization, we'll initialize it here. This dot underscore ocean is equal to a new objects dot ocean. That initializes it. Here we're going to instantiate it properly. We're going to say that this dot underscore ocean is equal to a new objects dot ocean. I'm kind of doing it twice. It's okay. We'll fix this later on in our semester. All right, so we're doing this, and then after we do this in the start, in main, okay, where does it go? Where should I draw the ocean? Should I draw it before the labels or after the labels? What do you think? Before. Why? Because of you draw things back to front, like the painter's algorithm, right? We store things, the back one goes to the back, and things are that you have to draw them in proper layer order. So the proper layer order is this dot add child, this dot underscore ocean. So the ocean gets drawn first, then the label, then the button. Okay, that's how it goes. And we're going to update the ocean, because remember, we can only move if I update. Update calls the update function inside the ocean class, right? This ocean class here, the update function. And that's the only way the ocean can move, if the update gets called. So we have to call it here inside of my start function, right? So here, I'm going to call this dot underscore ocean dot update. I'm going to call the update function for the ocean. And you know what? Probably the game, it's going to print out the label black, and black on blue not going to show up too good. So let's change this to yellow. Okay, so that's yellow. Wouldn't it be nice if I had standard colors I could use here? Yes, it would. And I can create those standard colors another time in another class. I can say blue, black, whatever. I don't have that right now, but I can make it, right? Okay, so cool. It's okay. I saved everything and we should work. I should be able to go here and we should be able to see my game. If I click start, it takes me to my play scene, my next scene. And so you can see that this is the endless scrolling ocean. Okay, but it's not perfect. Remember, you're going to see that problem where it resets. Let's see if you can see it. There. See it? Wait. There. See it again? Wait. There. Right? You don't see it? You can see it. If you actually look forward, it's actually there. It's really subtle, but it's right there. All right. Wait. There. Wait. There. It's hard to see, but that's what happens. It's actually resetting. And the way to fix this, we're not going to fix it right now. We're going to fix it later when we have two oceans, one here and one here. And we're going to reset off screen where it kind of does one of these, right? Okay, so that's the game. I want to take the same ocean and I'm going to put it on the other pages. I'm going to put it on my play scene and my end scene, okay? But you know what? Wouldn't it be nice if we can move this thing to the middle of the screen? And also, guess what? I just made a new thing. It's great if I put this up on GitHub now. Every time I make a new thing, make a commit and put it up on GitHub. So let's do that first. So again, going back to my project, here's my project. You can see that I have 34 changes that I made to my project. I added new assets, transpile, changed my vector class, my ocean class, my game object class, my start, and my index.html. All these things got changed, right? So I can do that from here, or I can go into my command line and do it from here. So I can say git add dot. Take a look at the left when I do this. If I click git add dot, look what happens on the left, right? So now these are all staged changes now in the staging area. And then I want to make a commit. Take a look at the left. What's going to happen? I can say that git commit -m added ocean object. Take a look at the left. What happens? Boom. All those changes are now committed, but they're not pushed. I got to push this up to GitHub. So git push origin across the origin remote to the master branch. Let me do that better for you so you guys can see it, because you guys can't see it from there. Git push across the origin remote into the master branch. And then press enter. And it's going to upload my changes to GitHub. That's what's going to happen. Okay, and you can see all the changes that are being done. And then notice it gives you a little link here that you can control click to see what it looks like on GitHub. This is what it looks like now. You can see that I have 7 commits, and my last commit is this one, added ocean object. If I want to see previous commits, all I have to do is go down to the previous commit, this one, and click this little link right here. If I click it, you're going to see all the changes that I made. Green means add or update. Red means remove. That's what it means, okay? And if I want to look at the files, I can click Browse Files. And Browse Files will take me not to the master branch, but rather to that commit. And you can see this is what happened in the previous version. You can always look back. And this is the great thing about GitHub. If I just click code, though, you're going to see the master branch with all the new commits, which I just did. Okay? So that's this. Great. So I added this up to GitHub. Fantastic. I want to add my ocean to the rest of my files. I need to do the same thing. So I'm going to go back to play. And just like before, these should be private, right? And their names are not correct. Let's just rename them. So again, rename symbol. Remember, the way I do things is this. 1, make it work. 2, refactor. Make it better, right? But first, make it work. A student earlier today says to me, listen, you know what? My code is pretty ugly, Tom. Is it okay? Yeah, it's okay. Does it work? Yeah, good. It's okay. I'm not going to check your code if you use the same thing over and over again. Not yet. I just want you to understand how to use Create.js right now. Okay, private. just like we did before, it's going to be called ocean. It's going to be of type objects.ocean. I could copy paste, but I want to run through this one more time. Okay, and then here in the initialization, ocean is equal to a new objects.ocean, right? Oops. So I'm reusing the same object now, right? And here I can do the same thing where I add the ocean is equal to new objects.ocean. Notice I'm not specifying what the image is going to be. I'm doing that inside the ocean itself. Okay? On update, this dot underscore ocean dot update. And I'm going to draw the ocean before my other stuff. So this dot ocean add child, that'll be okay. This dot underscore ocean. Okay? And that's it. We're ready to go. Let's check this. So save, go back to our project, right? And start, and we're good. But you can see the placing. Remember I told you that the placing looks kind of dark because black on blue, no good. So we can change that. We can go here and change the color. Here's our color, right? And there it is. You can see that the change looks much better. Yellow on blue looks good. They're complementary, right? So that's better. And I'm going to do the same thing for the end scene. I'm just going to make it a little faster this time. So again, I'm just going to copy paste. And the best way to do this, in my opinion, is just to bring both the scenes that you want to copy into these things right here. So you can see there's two panes, and I want to look at this one and kind of look at the end scene here. There's my end scene. And what I want to do is I want to just copy from one to the other, so I don't have to do this. So just this. Then I'll modify everything after, right? So it's just that much easier, right? Now, you might say to yourself, wait. Didn't you say that copying is bad? Yeah, it's bad. But here what we're doing is we're making the use of the same object a bunch of times. I don't think this is a call to make a new function or some kind of class. It's not like that. I'm just reusing. I'm reusing the same object. That's okay, right? That's totally fine, right? So instead of me having to copy paste, I'm just doing this over and over again, right?
So when do you have you are assigning a new object in the constructor and in the start?
Yeah, I know.
Why do you?
It's just temporary. I'll fix it later. Wait. I'm going to explain why we don't have to do this later on. Later on, we're not doing that. We're just going to do it here. Okay? But for now, we need to. Okay, so...
Why for now? Sorry. Why for now we need to do that?
Well, because by default, the way that our classes work is if these aren't initialized, TypeScript is going to complain, right? And unfortunately, it doesn't detect that they're initialized in the start function. It only detects the constructor, it being initialized there. So for now, what we're doing is we're initializing it here for now to show you what we need to do. And then we're actually doing the instantiation here, because in our start method, what's really happening is we're initializing and instantiating. That's what I want to do here in my start. Otherwise, we don't need the start method. We can just do everything in constructor, right? I want to just separate it out. I want to separate the start from the constructor to make it cleaner. Right now, we have to deal with this because there's an issue. One thing we can do to overcome the issues is to put question marks here, which are optionals, right? But that doesn't solve the problem. Sometimes it causes other problems. So we'll talk about later on in the course how to fix this problem. So private, we need to make these private like we did before. And I want to rename these things and label. So again, rename symbol. And same thing with my back button, rename symbol. Okay, there we go. So that's our end scene, done. So all the same, go back. We can go start, play, and end. You can see that that's no good. So we can go back up here and change the color. Color's right here, which is FF00. And you can see that now has changed till we have everything. We have ocean in every single scene. Okay, good. Wouldn't it be nice if we had our ocean centered? right? This looks pretty bad, right? I mean, it's on the left-hand side. It's not really looking like a game much. Most games have their stuff centered in the middle. That's like CSS stuff we can do, right? So we want to move this element, which is a canvas element, in the middle. And a couple ways you can do this, because it is a web page after all, right? We can go to our CSS, and in my CSS I can do some of that work. I need to prep for it a little bit, and I recommend wrapping it in a div tag. So we can say that I have a div tag with an ID of I don't know, main content, let's say. And what we can do is we can take this canvas element, and we can move this up here inside of our div tag, right? And then in my main content, what I want to do is I want to specify how big my space is going to be. So I can say that, let's say in my CSS, I can go into here and say main contents. I can say that the width is, I don't know, 640 pixels, and my margin is going to be 0. The way it works is 0, top, right, bottom, left for the margins, right? And if I only specify 2, it's top and bottom, right and left, right? So top and bottom is 0, no margin. Right and left, auto, right? And if I did this, then if I go back, you can see it's centered. Okay, so centering, nice, nice. And what I want to do is, instead of my border radius being 5, let's make it 10. So a little bit smoother over here. Also, if I go to dark mode right now, you can see that in dark mode, right, it makes these everything dark. But if I don't specify a background color, by default, it becomes no color. It takes the color of this. And just to be more compatible, a lot of times what I want to do is specify a background color of white. So I can say background color white. Okay. I don't need to do this, but I'm doing it. Okay. I can also specify a background color for my body, right, of a certain color. So instead of making it like white here, we can make it a gray color. So I can say that the body tag itself can have a background color. Again, just minor changes, guys, to make your game look better. So we can say background color of the whole body can change to, like, I don't know, like a light gray, right? And you can see that that's going to change that, so it's a little bit colored. And if I go back to these scenes, you can see how this works. Okay. Again, just trying to make it a little bit nicer, so it's not a white page. White's too in your face, right? Too much. And even if I go to, you can see if I go to dark mode, it changes this color, the colors to, it darkens everything. So that's kind of what dark mode does, right? Even though it's gray, it'll make it go even lighter, darker than this, okay? Okay, so that's this, light gray, and so on. And I've added my ocean to all the scenes, so this is a great place to put it up on GitHub again, because I mean, we've done a couple things, right? So let's go to here. You can see that these are all the changes. This time I use my UI here in Visual Studio Code instead of my command line. I can just stage everything. That's like doing git add dot just by pressing this button. If I click this, it'll be git remove whatever I did, all these options. And then I add a thing. I can say that added ocean to play and start, play, and end scenes. Start, play, and end scenes. As long as I stay within the 50 character limit, I'm okay. And then push. So I can do everything from the command line here. Sorry, from the UI, no command line. All right, and I actually changed the background and made it centered and all that. Okay, so that's pretty good. I'm pretty happy with where we're at right now. However, I want to put this up on the web so you guys can see it, right? And remember, my game, this game here, right, which is the one we've been looking at. So this one, this is under my last name. That's like my domain. But you can actually see the code that made this, right? If you go to me, so if you go to github.com, and if you look at me, which is this, you can see that I have repositories of my own. And if you look at this, right, you can find my code right here. This is the code for MailPilot. How do I know how to do this? Well, GitHub has something called GitHub Pages. GitHub Pages, you can go to pages.github.com, and it tells you how to put web pages for free up on GitHub, right? Which is where I recommend for your stuff to, where you want to put your stuff. And notice it gives you some instructions. It says, make a repository, call it your username.github.io, which is kind of what I did, my username.github.io. That's the default way of doing it, all right? But I can make every repository do this too. Let me show you what I'm talking about. One thing we know that for sure, I have this thing called NoJekyll, so .NoJekyll, as well as CNAME. CNAME is actually a file that I have to have if I have my own domain, which means if I have Tsiliopoulos.com, I need to have a CNAME that has that domain in here too. And if I have my own domain, I can point my domain at GitHub, my GitHub repo, and then I can have my custom domain name here, okay? By the way, you can get your own custom domain if you want. A couple ways. You can pay for it by going to GoDaddy, right? And let's say if your name was like John Smith, you could like look for johnsmith.com, right? And then, of course, it'd be worth like $1 million. Holy crap, right? But again, if you wanted to, johnsmith.com is totally available for you for $1 million, right? No joke. This is the actual price, 1.3 million. Anyways, but you can also look for other names, or you can make your own name, like, thefunkygame.com, right? Whatever. And if the funky game is taken, it's not actually. You can pay $2.99 per month, right? That's a big difference. And thefunkygame.com can point to your website, your GitHub link, right? Totally possible. But if you don't want to pay anything, and that's totally fine, no one's making you pay anything in this course, you can get access to free names through the GitHub Developer Pack. So if you go to education.github.com, and I put this link on external links. If you actually go to eCentennial, under resources, I gave you this GitHub education pack that you can get access to. Anyone can do it by pressing education.github.com and following the steps. You get access to like a ton of stuff like name.com and Namecheap. And notice that both places, name.com and Namecheap, give you a free domain. That's a free thefunkygame.com domain or whatever for a whole year, okay? Highly recommend getting this GitHub education pack. It gives you a ton of stuff. You can make your own virtual server up online with DigitalOcean. DigitalOcean is an outfit here in Toronto. They actually serve up little droplets, that's what they call them, which are little virtual domains, if you will. You can also get access to JetBrains and all the beautiful applications they create, as well as Microsoft Azure, AWS. I can keep going and going and going and going. There's like a ton of stuff. GitHub also gives you unlimited private repos if you want to, if you sign up for GitHub.education. So a ton of different things, and there's just so much you get for free, right? So sign up if you haven't had a chance to do this already. I may have mentioned this before. Some people haven't signed up, and there's an amazing group of applications you can try for at least a year. Okay, or get some credit. Like they give you $50 credit for free. Let's try it out. So yeah, you can totally point to it, and if you do, then you're going to need to have a CNAME. The CNAME is not necessary typically when you make your website. You don't need it, right? You can just use GitHub's default name it gives you. Okay. However, mine does. Mine uses this CNAME. The other thing that we're going to need is .NoJekyll. NoJekyll. By default, GitHub does not see node modules. Node modules, they're ignored by GitHub, right? So when you put it up online, and if you have a website that's hosted by GitHub, node modules, you're blind to node modules. There's no node modules, right? So to make that come back, you have to use something called NoJekyll, because GitHub Pages uses something called Jekyll as their server, kind of in the background. So NoJekyll says, don't use that. Don't worry about the Jekyll database. And it'll start looking in node modules again. Okay, so we need to include this file, which is actually empty, into our application. So let's just do that. So I'm just going to copy the name, no Jekyll, and go into our application here. It's got to be spelled exactly right, and it's got to be here in the root. Can't be in any other folder. I'm going to make a new file called no Jekyll. And that's it. I'm hearing jackpots and slot machines. All right? So cool. Does that make sense? So no Jekyll allows me to put it up online. Cool. Now that I've added it, I need to put it up on GitHub. So I'm going to say added a no Jekyll file. Okay, and I'll stage this, and I'll commit it, and I'll push it. It needs to be there. If it's not there, not going to work. Your node module will be ignored. Now that it's up there, I can go up to my repo, which is this repo right here, refresh. You can see that I have 9 commits, right? I just added a no Jekyll file. Here it is, no Jekyll. You can see it's part of that thing. I can go to settings now, and under settings I can activate my GitHub pages for this repository. You can do it per repository, not just for your entire site. So if I scroll down, you're going to see further down the page where it says GitHub Pages, we can specify which branch uses it. So if I go here and I click master branch, guess what? Now GitHub Pages is working on this thing. Now sometimes it takes a few minutes to propagate because it's actually going to work across the entire world. So what happens is the DNS stuff has to update, and also your browser is caching. So it takes a few minutes. You may have to come back here and try it again. However, if you scroll down again, you can see that it gives you a friendly link. This link. This is going to be the new link that's going to work. So if I click this link, control click, and if everything went well, then hey, there's the link. It's live. Try it yourself. Try it now. It'll work. Go ahead. Try this link. centennialcollege.github.io, COMP397, W2020, lesson 6C. Guys, this is what I need for you for assignment 1. So I can make your game, I can play your game live. Right? So you need to know how to do this. That's why I'm recording this online for you all. Okay, if you don't have this link, you'll lose 2 marks. Or 4 marks, something like that. And I can go through that again. So problems with this. There are problems associated with this, guys. Don't be frustrated because this is free. Sometimes it doesn't show this right away. You need to wait until it propagates. Sometimes also it's helpful to look at this with another browser. For example, maybe Firefox. God forbid, Microsoft Edge, something, right? At least you can see another view of this, because if you don't do it, sometimes caching will not show you this view at all. Okay? We're going to see that. I'm going to upload things, and then I'm going to check here, and it's not going to be ready. It's not going to work. And you're going to be, Tom, it's not working. No, it's working. It just hasn't updated yet. It takes a second. So just bear with it while it works. Okay, so try this out and see if it's working for you. You should be able to see this. I should be able to go back and forth, and it's live on the internet. Why is this awesome? It's awesome because 2 things. I have a live website right now that I just created, number 1. 2, if you're a student and you're going to an interview, you can say, hey, look, here's my stuff. It's right here. It's live. Check it out. I made this, right? And this is what I want to do for you guys. I want you guys to build up a portfolio of stuff that you can use here live on the internet. Questions around making it live? It's pretty good. The only thing I had to change to make it work, right? If you look at my VS Code, you have to add a node Jekyll file. If you don't add this in, node modules will be ignored. And you'll get a bunch of errors saying, don't know what this is. Why? Well, take a look why. Because everything depends on these files to work. If these files aren't working, all of these files are going to fail to work too, right? This is the order. Remember, order matters. And until I have this, Easel.js, tween, sound, and preload loaded, none of this stuff is going to function. Does that make sense? Other solutions to this problem. Let's suppose you can't make node modules work. Well, you could use the CDN for each of them. CDN. So remember, up online, if you look at createjs.com, right? And if I look at just the createjs part right now, you can see that I have some options for downloading, right? So we've been using yarn add, Easel.js, yarn add, whatever. We did all that stuff, right? But that's local to my system. The other way to do it that they highly recommend when you actually have everything ready to go from a development perspective, my build or my distribution of my game, right, is instead of downloading it, what I may want to do is use the CDN. So notice it says you can download everything, but there's also the CDN URL. Take a look at this copy CDN URL. What are these things? Well, if I click copy CDN URL, it gives you the code to get access to the Create.js library with a link, my friends. So that means that here, instead of putting access to my node modules, I can just use this link instead. That'll work 100% because it's pointing to another website somewhere else. Okay, so that's another option, and we're going to do that later. When we're finished our game, instead of using our local node modules, we'll use these CDNs for each of these things. Not now, later, right? Make sense? Okay, so that's things that you know how to do. And if you wanted to do this now, if you wanted to use the CDNs now, you can. Sometimes, though, I find that with CDNs, code hinting doesn't always work exactly the same way, and all that kind of stuff. And you might have a delay if you're working offline. You know, as an example, normally we don't work offline, but just in case you want to work offline, like on a bus somewhere, not going to work. Because you can't connect. You need a connection to make your stuff work. So this is kind of a dependency I don't like. I like to work so I can work locally, and then when I need to connect and I need to clean it up, I can push it up and use the CDNs and just replace these things. I'll comment these ones out and I'll use the CDNs. Okay, that's not a problem. I mean, it's a minor detail these days, but back in the day, CDNs, if you don't have access to the internet, a persistent connection, then you couldn't use them, right? Here, we have persistent connections. If Google goes down, something happened to the world. There's a major fallout somewhere. I don't know, nuclear blast, right? If Google goes down, or some other weird thing, a hack. I'm joking, but yeah, they don't normally go down. Google doesn't go down. Microsoft doesn't go down. Facebook normally doesn't go down. Right? Those things are almost impossible for them to go down. Okay. So CDN stands for Content Delivery Network, and which means that it's a distributed network across the internet. And why is this better? Because it's better because if you've already gone and loaded this Create.js file, easeljs.min.js, one time, it's cached in your browser, which means loading is actually faster than if you had it locally on the machine. Because it's on your browser already, right? So that's how this works. Okay, so any questions around the topics we've covered so far? Just recap. So we covered this idea of a scrolling background, okay? And the scrolling background, the way it works again, is just a trick. It starts at the top, goes to the bottom, and then resets over and over again. It keeps doing that over and over again, creating the illusion of an endless scrolling background. Okay, that's what we covered. We covered the idea that, you know, when we're doing this kind of stuff, we're moving things up and down like this, right? We definitely have to, or review everything. We have to add the ocean inside of our scene, or first inside of our index.html. And then we cover what it would be like if we want to put our site up online. We need to use this no Jekyll file that's empty when we put it up on GitHub. And then we talked about GitHub pages and how to connect to them. Okay. One other thing we did also is we went to our content, our game.css, and we updated our game so that it's centered, as well as it has a bit of a light gray background around it, so we can see the difference between our game, right? So again, if you look up online, that's what it looks like. And if we look at here, and if I refresh now, that's me. That's my website. But I also have it up on here on our commits. So this one, you can see that that's also the same. And what I also talked about is this idea of propagation delay, right? Because once I put it up online, sometimes there's a bit of a delay before it changes. And that's because of your caching in your browser and the fact that it's propagating across the internet. All right, let's stop recording now, take a short break. And when we get back, I'm going to do a couple things. I want to talk about preloading. I want to start preloading my assets. One thing we've been doing that's been bugging me from the beginning is this. If you look at our structure right now, if I go into scripts and if I go into objects, game object, you can see that there's an area down here where I'm waiting for the image to load. Oh man, I got this little event handler that's waiting for the image to load, and when it loads, finally, then I can measure it. Not always the best. Wouldn't it be nice if I can preload all my assets? Because every time I make a button, every time I make an object, an ocean, the first time, it goes out to my file system, grabs the ocean, and loads it in. So now that I've used it 3 times, every single time my page is loaded, my screen, my scenes, goes out to the operating system, grabs that thing, and loads it back in. Why do I have to do that? Why don't I just point to the same one? I want to point to the same texture, the image that I just loaded, instead of loading it again. I don't want to load it again. I want to load it once. So we can do that with preloading. And we're going to use create.js, but we're going to use the preload.js, this part, for the first time today. We're going to look at the documentation and how to do that. We're going to look right in here for how to do preload. Okay? So let's stop recording now. We'll take a short break. When we come back, we'll preload.